Welcome to the SAICA Biz Impact Podcast, your ultimate business growth platform, where we simplify complex business topics with expert insights, market-relevant trends, and practical advice, all aimed at keeping you ahead of the curve.
Welcome to another SAICA Biz Impact Podcast show. I am your host, Luncedo Mthwendwe. This is your home where we unpack and simplify those business topics that are a bit complex, that affect your life on a day-to-day basis. And as I've promised you before, we will be bringing you experts, to share the insights around the business trends and some of the topics that are very important in your life or in your business. And today we will be talking about technology integration and adoption. And we have a guest today to help us unpack that topic in terms of what it means and how does it affect, your business and how can you get in around the tech in general. We have Christiaan Coetzee. Welcome on board.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Great. Christiaan is actually the managing director of the audit toolbar. So Christiaan, I'm quite excited to have you here on studio today.
Amazing.
All right. The topic at hand is around technology adoption and integration, especially on small businesses, even on bigger businesses, even individuals for that matter. Christiaan, you are coming in an era or in a period where technology is a term that is usually used everywhere you go. It's all about technology. And for an SME owner who's running a business out there, what does technology adoption and integration mean in their business? Just in layman's term, to understand what is this about?
I think I want to focus on those two words, right? So the adoption and the integration.
Yes.
And they very much hold hands there. The example I want to give you here is that if you as Lou, you might have some sort of problem, right? Maybe spam callers bothering you on your phone, okay? So you go out, you find an app, maybe you buy it, maybe there's a free app, you use the app, and it's done, right? So your adoption is quite easy because you're the decision maker, you the user of the software, the whole thing. Now the challenge that comes in for small business owners is that you've got one person making the decision and you might have 10 or 20 people that needs to use that application. And because they did not make that decision or they weren't part of that conversation, potentially, the adoption might be low. And so now you're losing out on the advantages there. And this is a very big challenge, not only from the small business side, but also at the same time from the software developer side as well. Like these are challenges on both ends to try and get everybody to use and take benefit of this software. Now, that's the one thing. Now, the integration part cannot be dealt with separately because it forms part of that adoption, right? Yes. Because we're so fatigued by all these applications coming our way that I've already got 10 applications I'm using on a day-to-day basis. Now Lou comes and he adds another one, right? That adds to it. So now the question becomes like, how can we focus on the problem that we're solving and solve that problem in a way that does not burden you with more problems, right? Correct, we need to remove the problem, right? And so the example is, what if we build an application, and I'm slightly biased here because this is how mine runs. What if we build an application that runs within Excel? Now we've integrated, right? You already use it all day long. Now we just integrated and enhanced it. For most people, they might not even realize that it's a separate application. So, and that's an example of what I'm talking. So the integration will feed the adoption. And really, when you look at those two terms, those are like certainly big challenges and problems that we need to solve.
Absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense. Sense. It's all about first you need to adopt. Once you've adopted, then you can integrate with some of the tools that you already have. So that's part of just scaling up a little bit, bringing more efficiency as well in the process. All right. So now, as a CA difference maker, how can you help businesses with technology adoption and integration, and what value can you add as a CA SA?
The value add that a CA can bring to a business is it is paramount. And what's interesting about that, there's the saying that says a chef never cooks at home, right?
Absolutely.
Now, being a CA myself, having been in practice for more than a decade, and now being on the other side of the table, where I'm running a business and I've got CAs looking after my books and my accounting, my controls, it has been very insightful to me. Number one, the peace of mind that I have, knowing that my legislative responsibilities, my tax responsibilities, all of these things are taken care of, right? Because I've got this team behind the scenes taking care of that. That's the one thing. But now turning that back, so number one, that value is, I can't put a number on it. It's really, it's a significant value, that peace of mind. One less problem I need to think about. But the second thing is, like, a CA has been trained to look at a business and look at controls, look at systems.
Holistically.
Right? The whole thing through. And so you might say, you know what, we're going to deploy this new system into our business because it's going to save us so much time, right? Maybe the system is a CRM system that integrates your accounting and your sales funnel and the whole thing, okay? Now, without you knowing, you might be breaking segregation of duties or some keying internal controls there, exposing yourself to certain risks, maybe risks in error, maybe risks in fraud. You know, you might be opening that back door for somebody else to come in there and add to the complications of the whole thing. And so what I'm trying to say is that, especially when it comes to the sales process, the finance process, if you are starting to adopt integration there, then certainly at the very least, just a discussion with your business's CA, just having, like, whether they in the business or out the business, pick up the phone, have that discussion, say, look, you know, this is the new banking system and this is the new credit cards online payment system that we've built. Can you spend a few, just have a look at it and see how safe are we? You know what I'm saying?
Then that's where that's where they usually say, you know, the CAs are not just accountants, but a business advisor. Because what you are saying, you're not only just looking at the fact that there's a software that you need to sell. However, you're looking at the controls within the processes within the business, and ensure that before you deploy any softwares or any solutions, at least all of that would have been taken into consideration. So it's not just one angle, but you're looking at different angles as a CA, right?
And the way a CA looks at your business is going to be completely different to the way you look at it, or to the way somebody external looks at it. And they will be able to give you very detailed reports on any deficiencies in any of your controls or any of your systems, or risks that you might be exposing yourself to when it comes to legislation and tax requirements and all of the above. And there's plenty of risks in that regard for the small business owner.
And I guess that answers one of the questions about, you know, CAs are only just financial people. We do have IT, we do have technologists who are CAs as well, you know. So you're not just limited on the numbers. All right. There's one word that you mentioned on your, while you're trying to explain. You spoke about CRM.
Yes,
right? And there is, you know, I met one of the salesmen 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. And he was talking about CRM, he was talking about ERP as well. And I could listen to this gentleman, and I'm like, is he aware that, you know, some of the SME owners don't know that what is the difference between your CRM and ERP softwares? Because you find that there will be those salespeople that are selling all of these tools. But you find that this business owner does not understand what you are saying. You know? So what's the difference between those two, just those jargons here?
So when we're talking about CRM, Lou, we're really looking at one part of the business. We're looking at the front end, the sales process. You know, how do we deal with our clients, and how do we track and manage that entire process. When we take one step back and we look at an ERP, that is where it all comes together, right? The ERP says, okay, so if Lou is a client of mine and he's gone through the CRM and we've signed him up, now the accounting system needs to write an invoice. But now how is that processed? Which accounts does it fall into? And now how are we going to deal with the VAT? And then at the same time, you know, we still need to have somebody on the payroll, and we've got this, and so you've got all these systems in the business coming together to make up that ERP. Generally that's the way that I like to think of it. All
right. So what are I mean, you are in the tech space, and you deal with this on day-to-day basis. And there would be some misconceptions, in the market regarding the use of technology. What have you picked up, around that? These are the most misconceptions around the use of tech out there in businesses.
I think a lot of the time we expect it to be very complicated, very expensive, lots of risk. And you always hear these horror stories about somebody replacing a core system in their business, and for 3 or 6 months, everything's falling apart and clients are unhappy. And I think those scary stories and the complications that it can be has built in a bit of a apprehension against taking or adopting these things. At least in my view, I think that is the main misconception, because like I said in an earlier question you asked, like I said, is that it can be simple. And I think the biggest problem that we have is that we are not asking the right question when we start implementing, because the technology should follow the problem.
Yeah.
We cannot bring in technology if we're not clear on the problem.
Solving the problem. Yeah.
At least for me and for all my clients, what we've seen is like, if we focus on what the problem is, then you go find the appropriate solution.
Correct.
And then it's a smooth and easy and simple way, because you're finding the most effective and most simple way to solve that problem. By flipping it the other way around, that's where we burn our fingers, and that's where it becomes challenging.
Talking about solving problems, we have picked up, especially late last year and in 2023, and I know 2024 as well, it's going to be aggressive. We've spoken about, for instance, the AI. There's machine learning. There's open source. There's all of these now, new ways of doing things. As you said before, for me to type an email, a proper executive email, I would spend 30 minutes trying to rewrite. Right now, you have software that you can just say, please write an email for me. They're not even that expensive. So what are the trends that you are picking up that out there that are really coming to the fore, and that are not even that expensive for that matter, for SMEs to start to use going forward?
Yeah, I think that is such an excellent example of not only a tool that's built in the right way. So this is the interesting thing, right? So there's been lots of trends amongst many different disciplines in technology over the last few years, right? But nothing has seen the kind of growth and adoption that this generative AI thing has seen, right? And every time you think about it, it's just because it's so simple. It's so easy to use. I'm not putting the burden on you as Lou to say, now you need to go and do a 3-day course or learn this integration or some Python script. What we're doing here is we're saying, here's a chat, like any other chat. You just type in what you want and this thing will take it over. And I think that is certainly what I think one of the reasons why this thing has been growing like it. But for the small business owner, that's where the beauty comes in, because we're going back to your 10-step sales process that you've written down, right? And let's say, for argument's sake, back to the example, one of those steps is that every time you have a conversation with a client or you book a meeting or something, an email has to go out. That is such a good example of just take that to one of those AI models, type it in saying, this is my problem, what do you think, right? And those models might just start writing up the code that you need to use to get that adopted. Now, it's still going to be quite intimidating if you've never seen code and programming and software, but then you turn back into your staff and you find the youngest person in your on your payroll, and you just bring him in, and or her in, and say, how can I take this code, put it in here so we can take out one of these 10 steps.
So it's not that scary as people make it out to be, right?
I think it's very difficult to say. I think I often tend to become a bit jaded because I've over the years learned so many different programming languages, and I can find my way around code quite easily. So I'm always cognizant to say, oh, this is not that scary, because for somebody who's never seen it, they might feel that. So it's hard to say, but I would say, lean on the youngsters.
So how has, you spoke about that you've been in this journey for quite some time, but what are some of the practical examples that you can bring on board in terms of how has technology, or what are some of the techs that you have used that have helped your business to really scale up?
I almost want to answer your question by not pinpointing a specific technology. I think that the biggest thing for me was, it's interesting. I thought of something now when we mentioned the problems, and I keep talking about the 10-step process, right? So one of the interesting things that came out in over the last few years was so the focus for me and my team is audit process improvement, right? So a big part of that is software. But what was interesting is sometimes we just sit down with the team, with the client, and we say, okay, so what is the process? Like, how do you plan an audit? Who's involved? Where's the manager? Who's doing this? Who's doing that? You just look at the whole thing. And oftentimes by just plotting out the system and just trying to see what's going on, you're going to find your technology and adoption, integration, all of that taking place without a single line of code. It might just be moving a responsibility around to the next person, because software at its core is just saying that here's the process, what steps can we improve, how do we speed it up? Software is the tool that applies on that. So even if you don't understand software, you don't understand programming, just understand the process and see if you can solve that. And then software will come along and add to it.
I like that you brought it closer to your business. And I mean, in that point, just tell us a bit about your business, you know, and how have you made an impact just in the technology space?
Amazing. So we spoke earlier about the bigger companies making big investments in data analytics, automation, and AI, and all of these things. And the challenge that the small business owner has in that regard to try and keep up, to try and adopt these things when that small business owner inevitably has 20 other things on their desk at that moment that's all urgent as well. And so as somebody who's seen both sides of that world in the accounting and auditing profession, you know, the very big firm and how they operate and how they build these softwares, and also seen how the smaller firms oftentimes struggle to adopt these things. For me, the challenge was, or the almost like the calling was, to fill that gap, right? How do we build something that is simple and affordable and accessible, that everybody can get their hands on it? And now, you know, our entire client base, it doesn't matter how small the firm is, even if it's just a one-man show, they have a taste of the kind of technology being used in those big firms. And it's not a case of, you know, because sometimes those big firms, the technology is so complex that you need the experts to go in and use it.
That's more cost as well.
And so part of the challenge for us is to say, how do you take this very complicated thing and make it just easy to use for anybody involved? Because as small business owners, we don't have the time. We don't have the resources. We need to get to a solution quickly and to the point, you know. But let's say, for example, you know, when the microwave was first invented, first built, you know, home microwave. I imagine the scene being a bunch of engineers there with all sorts of interesting technology and cables going everywhere, and they were able to cook something up or heat something up using that. But now we're talking 3 or 4 experts, way too many complexities and systems needing to be monitored. And we've been able to get from that into a position where you go into a shop, spend a bit of money, you got a box, you put something in, you press a button, and now we've got the same accessibility and technology. And so in our auditing and accounting world, what we've currently have is the big firms, they're sitting with all these engineers. They've got all these expertise so they can get things done. But we've not yet pulled all of that back into the easy to use accessibility point. And so that gap and that challenge, that is the core purpose that my company is trying to solve.
No, that's brilliant. And I like the fact that you're catering as well for the SME. I mean, we spoke about, I mean, if you look at the economy right now, you see that small businesses contribute quite a lot in terms of, you know, and we need to bring resources and softwares that at least assist them to be more efficient in terms of running their businesses.
And the small business, like it's such a crucial thing, especially in South Africa. It's like, you know, the bottom steps of the ladder is what's granted to us with the small businesses, you know. Because a lot of the time you go and like, I don't know how it works in all of the other industries, but if you look at like the auditing and accounting world, a lot of the bigger firms will say, no, you have to have this degree and this postgraduate, and you have to have these things, and that's when we open the door for you. And that shuts a lot of doors for a lot of South Africans. You know, the small businesses, like the one that I was trained at, they were like, no, you're welcome in. Oh, you don't? You're busy studying through UNISA? It's fine. Come on inside.
It's all about the attitude and the commitment,
yeah.
and then you're going to learn throughout while you're there.
I think it's difficult to comprehend the impact that has across the entire country and the economies, because
Christiaan, your last parting shot.
Okay.
For most of the SMEs who are listening today, and they're listening to a chartered accountant talking about, you know, technology integration.
Yeah.
What are some of the tips that you would love to share with them? Just your last parting tips. That any SME right now is just driving, he's going to work or is at home, you know, listening to this. What would you like them to take away from this? What are the strategies or the tips that they can take from this discussion?
I want to give you a slightly longer answer here, right? So I was listening to a discussion. There was a podcast where they're interviewing an entrepreneur, quite a successful, I think a US-based guy selling aeroplanes, right? And you know, he's almost at the end of his career. He's very strong in his profession. He understands his business very well. But like within the last few months, he's 10x the size of his business, right? And so they're asking about that, and he said that, you know, his grandson said, no, here's this thing called TikTok, and there's this YouTube Shorts and all these things, and I know how to do it, so I'll show you. And so they started producing videos and things, and all of a sudden his business is booming. And so I'm using that analogy to say, you know, what are my tips? I think, you know, let's open that door and listen to the generation coming into the professional market now, because these guys know what they're doing. There's so many examples and incidents that I've come across where the junior guy in the firm is frustrated by a process that is manual, right? Because, you know, the younger generation is let's get it done, right? So they naturally get more frustrated by a process or a system, and then they also go ahead and, you know, write up the code, find the system, find the application, and they'll come to you and say, you know what, Lou, you're doing this thing every day. It's costing you 2 hours per day, right? Here's an app, use it. I'm saying take that advice. Like, that is my biggest top set. Take that advice and go for those low hanging fruits. Start your technology and adoption with implementing those small steps. And incrementally over time, you are going to be very technologically savvy as an enterprise.
Wow. Christiaan, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, you've shared very good nuggets that I hope, you know, our entrepreneurs are going to be able to implement going forward. But my key takeaway, as you said, is all about solving the problem. Understand what the problem is. Don't just use softwares for the sake of using it. Understand what is the problem that you are trying to solve. Once you have that, it becomes easier. And again, it's not something that you have to spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands rands. It's a process, step by step, and you will get there. So let us know what you thought of this episode, and if you've got any recommendations, we are open. Follow our SAICA page on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram, and don't forget to share this content with, you know, your family members, your fellow business entrepreneurs that are out there that you know that will benefit from it. So subscribe and like the page. That's it from me, Luncedo Mthwendwe. See you on the next one.
The SAICA Biz Impact Podcast is proudly brought to you by SAICA, committed to growing impactful businesses in collaboration with our SAICA accredited practitioners. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and visit our website for more valuable resources.